From the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Hello, you're watching Business Live, the top stories this afternoon. An appalling mess, but one we'll sort out. The Transport Minister announces another delay to HS2, but says the government will restore public trust in the project. Inflation eases slightly, but the Chancellor admits there is more to do to bring down living costs. Plus, is portable nuclear power the key to fueling the data centres needed for artificial intelligence? Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. HS2 is an appalling mess, but the government is going to sort it out. That was the message from the Transport Minister, Heidi Alexander, in the Commons this afternoon. She confirmed that the high-speed rail line would be delayed beyond 2033, but promised to set new targets and restore public faith in the project. Well, joining me now is Michael Gross, a property developer and HS2 critic. Michael, good to talk to you today. You owned land that was to become Euston Station when it was compulsorily purchased back by HS2. You took them to court over the valuation. Do you feel this has all been a huge waste of your time and money?
It wasn't exactly a waste of my time and money. I owned a substantial property, all the buildings in front of Euston Station, and I wanted to get fair value for it. But what we're talking about now is not me. We're talking about a project that was a Ponzi scheme from the outset. It was never, ever deliverable, and everybody concerned with it knew it wasn't deliverable, and the current Secretary of State knows that now. If she's claiming she needs to find out what the numbers are. We've told everybody what the numbers would be since Panorama in 2018, 7 years ago, and they've steadfastly refused to believe us. And this is not just the Tory administrations, who of course had primary responsibility, but this was cross-party corruption. Meg Hillier, as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and Clifton Brown, who was then her deputy, is now the chairman, were given the information and suppressed it. So they continued to accept Bernadette Kelly and HS2's figures when they knew they weren't true. So you have to ask yourself, why would Labour politicians, let alone the Conservatives, not want to expose this when they could have, and could have stopped probably about 2/3 of the money that's already been wasted? This will cost.
Meg Hillier is not here to defend herself, but do you think the Labour Party can get it back on track?
No, absolutely not. And they know they can't. This project going into Euston will cost the best part of £500 billion. And they know that. And all they're doing is kicking the can down the road so they can keep this gravy train to nowhere going.
Do you think it will
eventually
at some point get up and running?
No, it won't get up and running because this country will be flat broke by that time.
Really? So you think all this further money that the government is going to plough into this is totally wasted?
In the spending review, as I've published a video on, in the spending review, Rachel Reeves said there's 25 million to bring it into Euston. At today's prices, it would cost well in excess of 50 billion. And as this thing won't be deliverable under any circumstances, even if it was delivered, probably well into the 2050s or 25 years from now, you can do the maths on a 4% compounded inflation yourself.
Wow, yeah, massive figures. You've spent your career running and developing infrastructure projects. Why do you think the UK has messed this one up so royally?
Well, I mean, if you look at the unbroken history of failure of the Department of Transport, the West Coast Line, Heathrow that's never appeared, they spent more on the Thames crossing than the longest tunnel in Europe, in the world costs Norway, and they haven't even started yet. There's a lot of graft, there's a lot of kickbacks, and there's a lot of incompetence.
You're talking to us from Israel now on a slightly different subject. Just wondered what the atmosphere is like there now. Are you worried about being there?
I'm as least worried than people probably were in the UK in 1939, because the competence of the IDF, if you want to compare it to the United States' failure to rescue their hostages, when you see what the IDF has done in the last week, it's virtually miraculous. Yes, of course we're under rocket fire every night, but you know, not to have a Islamic fascist terrorist sponsoring state with the equipment to wipe us out, which they've threatened to do for 40 years, doesn't leave the country with much alternative.
Michael Gross, property developer and HS2 critic, currently talking to us from Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, new figures today show that inflation has eased slightly, but the Chancellor says there is still work to do to make people better off. According to the Office for National Statistics, inflation was 3.4% in May, down from the 14-month high of 3.5% in April. Falling transport costs helped, but that was offset by rising food and furniture prices. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been looking at the numbers.
When it comes to the cost of living, there are few more important data points than what's going on with inflation. But what's going on beneath the data? It's worth just looking at this. This is showing you the annual rate at which prices are changing. That's inflation, the consumer price index, and how much it's going up and down on an annual basis. Last time around, there was data in April. They said it was 3.5%. They later then said it should have been 3.4%. But nonetheless, there it is in May, 3.4%. Now, you might have thought from looking at this chart that means a lot of the cost of living crisis is now over. Yes, inflation is still kind of a little bit higher than the Bank of England would like it, but it's a lot lower than those double-digit levels that it hit in 2022. But now I want to just show you the same data, but rather than just looking at the annual change, so the rate of change, we're going to look at the level. This is really important, OK, because basically what we're talking about here is your average shopping basket of goods and services and how much over time that price is changing. And you can see here it tends to go up, and once it goes up, it doesn't tend to come down. That's important. When we talk about inflation, in practice, what economists are talking about with that 3.4% level, 3.4% change, is the difference between that point and that point, so over a year. OK, but if you're going to the supermarket and you're looking at the prices of things and trying to work out how much they've changed recently, you might not just be thinking about that difference, you might be thinking a little bit further back. And if you look back, for instance, the last 4 years, which I think, a lot of us do when we go to the supermarket, you're talking about a 25% change. And that's critical, because that change over the last 4 years, if you go back through history, we have not seen a 4-year change like that going back to the early 90s. So when you feel like you're going through this cost of living crisis, yeah, that is borne out by the data, but only when you dig a little bit deeper and look at the levels rather than looking at that annual rate that we often talk about quite a lot. So that's the story with inflation. It's worth just saying, on top of this deeper issue with the numbers, there's a bigger question here, which is that, is there more inflation in the pipeline? And actually looking at what's happening at the moment in the Middle East with Israel and Iran, when you look at what's happened to oil prices recently, they were coming down. But just in the last few weeks, just in June alone, they're up by 18%. So that's suggesting perhaps there could well be more inflation, more price rises to come in the pipeline. And that's before you even think about things like tariffs.
Well, joining me now is Henry Allen, who's a macro strategist at Deutsche Bank. And Henry, do you concur with Ed that there is, it seems, more inflation in the pipeline?
Well, that's definitely the risk, certainly, because with what's going on in the Middle East right now, we've seen a substantial increase in the oil price, already up over 10% in recent days since the attacks began. And clearly the risk is that if there were a further escalation, perhaps if the US got involved, if Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, then the risk is that oil prices could go up a lot further. And the good news is, for now at least, we haven't seen the sort of big increase in oil prices that we saw in 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine. Back then, oil prices spent nearly 6 months above $100 a barrel. They peaked at above $120 a barrel, whereas today we're in the $75 to $80 a barrel range. So for now, at least, we're still below where average oil prices were in 2024. But the concern is that if we did get that escalation that many are fearing right now, then certainly we've got a bigger inflationary wave coming.
I mean, do you think it's possible that they could even go over that $120 a barrel mark?
I think it's certainly possible, particularly if multiple geopolitical shocks happened at once. But I think getting past that $120 a barrel we saw 3 years ago after Russian invasion of Ukraine, I think that would be much more of a stretch, given that at the moment we're still sitting around the $75 to $80 range. We've only so far seen an increase from the lows of around 18%, as Ed showed in his chart. So to get right the way there, we'd have to see another 50% increase, which would be very much at the upper end of recent geopolitical shocks.
And what about interest rates, which we're expecting to get a decision on tomorrow? Where do you think the Bank of England's going to sit on this? What impact will these inflation figures have on that decision?
So I think for the decision tomorrow, it won't make too much of a difference, because where inflation has come out today is very much in line with what the Bank of England themselves were forecasting when they made their most recent decision last month. So it's widely expected that tomorrow, at least, they're going to keep rates on hold, which is sticking in line with that quarterly pattern they've been doing over the last year. So every 3 months, they've lowered interest rates by 0.25%. They did it most recently in May. They'll probably skip this meeting tomorrow, and then when we get to the next meeting after this in August, I expect there'll be another quarter-point cut, taking the base rate down to 4%. But certainly, as you mentioned, this spike in the oil price is coming again at a time when we've got this global tariff threat. That's certainly throwing a lot of uncertainty into the mix and is certainly clouding the picture as we look further towards year end.
What about the Fed? We've got a decision coming from them tonight. Donald Trump would certainly like to see a cut. Will he get it?
I think it would be a very, very big surprise. I think the Fed themselves are incredibly acutely conscious that politicians have tried to pressure them to lower rates in the past, and often that's backfired, because when they have lowered rates, as they saw in the 1970s, that just led to a big burst of inflation. So that definitely had costs. But in terms of the decision tonight, I think, a bit like the Bank of England, they'll want to keep policy on hold for now, assess where the uncertainty is, given the global tariff threat, given they don't know what Donald Trump is going to do next either. Indeed, actually, it's not long now, only 3 weeks until July 9th, which is when the 90-day extension to the original reciprocal tariffs runs out. So we've got a lot of uncertainty baked into the picture for 3 weeks' time already. We don't know what's going to happen there, whether the US are going to be able to reach trade deals with other countries. If they can, that's great news on the inflation side. But if they can't and tariffs go up, then you'd expect a lot more inflation yet to come. So I think the Fed, like the Bank of England, will remain pretty cautious right now.
Henry Allen from Deutsche Bank, good to talk to you. Thanks a lot. Still to come on Business Live. Is portable nuclear power the key to fueling the rise in artificial intelligence?
app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. London already has 50,000 e-bikes to rent, but the market is growing every year, apparently. Now, Bolt, the biggest micro-mobility operator in Europe, is bringing its e-bikes to the capital, offering ride-hailing and bike rental on a single app. Well, let's talk now to Kimberly Hurd, Senior General Manager for Bolt in the UK and Ireland. Good to talk to you, Kimberly. There are a lot of e-bikes out there. What's the market like? Who are using these bikes and how often?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm not sure if you've had the chance to use them yet in London. I personally have. I've also personally also gone to use an e-bike or a scooter and them not be available. What we personally see, so at Bolt, we've built up a presence across the UK over the last 5 years, now in 20 plus cities, serving over millions of passengers and 100,000 drivers. But here in London in particular, over half of London has used the Bolt platform in the last year. And with that, we see around 1 in 5 trips be under 3 kilometers. So we know there's a growing demand and need for micromobility in London in particular. And that's why we're going to be launching e-bikes in August.
But if these people are already using your cars, you're taking away your own trade, really, aren't you, by pushing them onto bikes?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's a growing need for multimodality. Sometimes, and what we've seen actually across our other European markets is we see passengers, around 50% of passengers actually using micromobility to connect to public transport. So users and passengers are actually using different types of transport to connect to each other in a very seamless way.
Is London a safe place to cycle, do you think? I mean, we see a lot of crashes. We see a lot of stuff on social media of pretty close shaves that people have. And there are already a lot of bikes out there.
I mean, safety is at the core of what we do at Bolt, and in particular, how we're thinking about micromobility. So for that reason, we're doing 2 very unique things in introducing our e-bike service. The first is actually having distance-based pricing. And so this is a first in the market. And what we see with distance-based pricing is that users, so rather than rushing to complete the trip within, a minute or, on a time-based pricing, users actually take more time. They're about 9% slower. And we believe that will reduce collisions by around 90%. We know that parking is a real issue, and parking both from a safety perspective and a passenger perspective is a real issue. And through the use of our AI technology and app-based directions, we're actually able to reduce improper parking. And so we've seen a 69% reduction in Stockholm, for instance.
So how do you do that? Because, obviously people are using them. The temptation is to just leap off them whenever you might see the bus that you want to catch, or, you might suddenly get to your tube station and know there's a tube coming in a minute. How does your app stop people just leaving them in an inappropriate place?
Well, it starts by directing them exactly to a parking space. So rather than, other apps that might, suggest different parking places, it helps suggest the parking spot nearest to your destination. We're also pairing that with quite a lot of education and sort of a Bolt Academy within our app in order to educate users on where best, not only on safety, but also on parking in itself.
We shall see if it works. Kimberly Hurd, Senior General Manager for the UK and Ireland at Bolt. Good to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Should have asked her if she travelled by bike today, shouldn't I? Now, we talked about artificial intelligence there. Well, the explosion in artificial intelligence in the last few years has seen a big drive for new data centres. But, of course, they need a huge amount of energy to run them. And in the United States, portable nuclear power is being seen as a possible answer. Nano Nuclear Energy claims to be the first mobile nuclear microreactor company to be listed publicly in the United States. Joining me now is its founder, Jay Yu. Jay, just explain how these units work.
We went public with Nano Nuclear Energy, listed on NASDAQ. We basically hired Cambridge University, their energy center, their postdocs there, and they created, alongside with UC Berkeley, created portable nuclear batteries on a truck, you could say, which could be transported through traditional means, ships, trains, on the road. And that was our thesis. We went public about a year ago. We were the #1 IPO top performer in America in 2024. So the need of data centers and AI, obviously, the drive of that has really catapulted us in the public markets.
They're portable, so they go to where the data centre needs them. But presumably once they're there, they must become static, because that data centre is not going to get any smaller, is it?
Yes, that's one of our actually portfolio of reactors. We have another one that is actually stationary and buried. So those are the ones that have a larger energy system and output. And our Kronos MMR, which stands for micro modular reactor, will be buried, and it could. There's electric output of about 15 megawatts. So we could actually cluster a modular these reactors underneath. So supplying these data centers with even up to 850 megawatts of power is possible.
Of course, whenever you mention nuclear, the thing that most people are concerned about is security. How can you guarantee that these units are safe?
Oh, they're safe because this is the new age of advanced nuclear technologies. I would say the new nuclear. Most of these reactor technologies like ours, they can explode. They could passively cool, and they can't just melt down and break apart anytime you want. There's auto shut-off functions as well. So in terms of technology-wise, this is the new generation. We have to rethink nuclear here. It's not the traditional large civil nuclear plants. It's actually the smaller ones that are safer. Nuclear is safe already. Guess that's per gigawatt hours. Nuclear is already safer than solar and wind.
I mean, what about stress testing for things like terrorism? Have they been checked for that as well?
Yeah, also, our reactors also use a small amount of enrichment. So terrorism, I mean, you literally would need to rip apart our reactor, take it to $1 billion chemical plant to enrich it. And that's just very unlikely or almost impossible.
What about the cost per unit? Is it scalable?
Yes, we're looking to factory fabricate our units and mass produce it. Obviously, the economy of scale will help reduce the cost. But once again, there's no commercial microreactor ever produced in the world. So we're looking to be the first. And the numbers will get cheaper over time. And especially when you cluster or modularize these reactors. That's the real cost of it. But right now, there's just a lot of unknowns around the cost, I would say.
Who are you looking to sell it to? I imagine it's the Amazons and Googles of this world, is it?
Yeah, I mean, we are talking to a lot of the big tech companies that are now building data centers across the U.S., especially the world as well. They're very hungry. AI has really pushed this. Our technology like I said, are in talks with a lot of these players. And we're excited about the future. And without nuclear, I think it's going to be a hard catch here, because that base load energy is really needed to drive these data centers.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Jay, you, the founder of Nano Nuclear Energy, really interested to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us on Sky News on Business Live.
Thank you.
Well, that is it from Business Live. Just to let you know, a little bit of breaking news in the last few moments. Sky News understands that COBRA meeting that is being held at Downing Street with the Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, also the UK's US Ambassador Peter Mandelson is down there at Downing Street as well. We understand that COBRA meeting, chaired by the Prime Minister, is over. Business Live is going to be back tomorrow with Darren McCaffrey tomorrow morning at 11:30. Coming up next, though, it's the News Hour with Mark Austin in London and Yalda Hakim in Jerusalem. Stay tuned.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.